This is Trigger Point, episode 9. My name's Serena, and finally we're getting to the end of this really, really long recording. So I know the movie's been out for a little while now, but here's our look on Beauty and the Beast. Enjoy.
Okay. So...
Final topic. This has been a long recording session.
Yes, although for most people who are listening to this would probably be a second episode.
Yeah,
Looking at the time right now, this has to be 2 episodes. We need to cut this.
Yeah.
We went and watched Beauty and the Beast.
Ta-da! Tale as old as time.
Emma Watson as Belle.
Mm.
She's pretty. Sorry, the reason why I am pausing and hesitating is because in my mind's eye, I am seeing her in that blue dress, which is, iconic to Belle's look, right? At the start of the show. Except they have to have her dress hitched up on one side through, I think, half of the movie.
Yeah.
And that just bugged me. Look, I've heard that is a symbol of feminism. That could be fine. But her flowery, not petticoat, bloomers underneath was very jarring. She looked like she was about to... I mean, she's supposed to be a farm girl, supposedly, right? And that made her look like she was getting ready to wade into a pig style at any moment. But that's not the kind of image I want of Belle, right? She could be an inventor's daughter, and in this show they made her,
actually an inventor as well,
right? Yeah, helping her dad out with getting the tools, making something else, making a washing machine of her own. That's all fantastic, but making her less than ladylike in the way she dresses is not something I want to see of a Disney princess. And I know you're trying to remake her image, but I like the Disney princess. And I didn't like how it's like she couldn't dress. Why are you walking around with your dress hitched up? Did you go to the bathroom and forgot that you got caught in your belt? Like, that's what I was feeling the whole way through. And it just distracted me for the whole half of the thing. I just kept I just wanted to run on stage and just yank that bit off her belt. It was like, just dress properly. Just dress properly. So there was that.
Before we start talking about overall, did you enjoy watching it?
Yes. I enjoyed how they changed certain things of it. So spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I liked how they explained why the nearby village of this castle don't remember that there was a royal family living nearby.
Yeah.
You think that would be something that people would remember. And they explained here why people don't remember. They upped the stakes, right? Instead of once the rose dies, in the original one, it was that everyone stays the way they were, right? The servants remain cups and teapots and all that sort of stuff, and the beast stays as a beast. In this one, we don't know what happens to the beast if the flower dies. We assume that he's going to stay as a beast, but all his servants were going to become inanimate objects. In fact, as each petal fell, people are constantly reminded of the stakes, because once the petal falls, the castle crumbles even more, and everybody becomes more inanimate.
Yeah.
Like, apparently the candelabra, we've become more stiffer. The clock suddenly chimes for a bit and can't speak. The wardrobe, which was falling asleep, stays asleep for longer. Like, that kind of things make it more imperative that the curse be broken.
Yeah, I did love the fact that that they showed the castle falling apart when the rose petal fell. That was something that it was very symbolic.
Yeah.
And it worked really well because it shows it shows the decay. It shows the decay of the castle, and it worked really well in the setting. I loved the visuals of that.
Well, no, okay. I liked how when the castle was... Before you found out that the castle was falling apart, you saw that the castle was kind of half in ruins and stuff. And me being me, I was like, I thought it was only like a few years. Like, how does a castle get to this state in a few years? Like, we've seen castles around and they're like hundreds of years old and they're like perfectly fine. How could this castle end up like this in just a few years? And then they explain it. It's because when the petal falls, more of it crumbles. So it's like, oh, great, you explained it and also still gave us that, this haunted, crumbly castle look and explained why it's like this. It's very thematic and rationally so, because they told you why it's doing that. And why there's stairwells that go up leading into nowhere, kind of thing, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I think the great thing they did with the live action was they did fix a lot of issues with the original. In saying that, they did make some new ones, which always happens. But at least they fixed some glaring issues or inconsistencies in the original, which, look, as a kid you probably wouldn't realize, but when you think of it as an adult, you kind of realize that doesn't actually make sense. So I'm glad they fixed those things to make it that, now they've actually explained it, and I actually enjoy it a lot more.
And I also liked how they gave Belle and the Beast more interaction.
Yeah.
Right? They explained that these two people have similar love in books. Well, okay, no. Probably the Beast didn't have a love in books, but they showed the part where they were both reading and they're discussing things that they read.
Yeah.
Or
there was just that more. It was less jarring that the fact that
they fell in love. Yeah.
It explained that process a lot better in the film, in the sense that it gave Belle a reason to be able to communicate with
the Beast.
Because actually, although the Beast probably didn't like reading or didn't like a lot of books that she read, at least they can talk about it.
Yeah.
At least they can talk about certain things. They can talk about how, this book that I'm reading is, it's actually about, knights and everything.
What was it? From her point of view, it was Lancelot and Guinevere.
Yeah, Guinevere.
Whereas from his point of view, it's Arthur and the Round Table, swords and fighting and all that stuff. So
I love that little bit of conversation which wasn't in the original. That really gave them a lot of character to play off with each other. To kind of
you could see how they will... like later on, if they were married and all that stuff, you could see how they would banter and talk to each other and probably make fun of each other.
Because then she goes like, but it's still a love story at the end. And then he goes, well, yes, I guess.
Or like the fact that she likes Romeo and Juliet and he kind of scoffs at it. He's like, well, of course you like that kind of book, right? I could, of course, I could see you loving that kind of book.
But that's what makes that interaction believable. Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in the original one, they never really talk so much. He growls at her, and she yells back at him, like after they get to know each other, and that's when he finds out, oh, you're sassy, I like you. That didn't really.
Yeah, there was no kind of progressiveness to their relationship. And actually, the one thing that I really enjoyed is that they fixed, well, not fixed, but okay, in the original. At least with one of the versions that was released in the original.
Special edition,
it showed that the Beast was illiterate. And in that edition, it was Belle teaching the Beast to read it. That's how they bond, right? I had a very... even as a kid when I was watching that, or later on, I always had a big issue with that. I'm like, this guy's a prince. Oh, sorry. We'll have to bleep that out. This is a freaking prince, How can a prince... not know how to read? It just doesn't make sense. And this one, they actually address that. They go like,
she was reciting Shakespeare, and he was reciting it as well. And she's like, "Oh, you've read Shakespeare?"
He's like, "I have a very expensive education." I was like, "Yes, thank you. You are a prince. Of course you would have a very expensive education. You wouldn't need a commoner to teach you how to read." Anyway, so I was. That just bugged me as a kid, so I was really glad that they fixed that. Anyway,
yeah. I also liked how the song Something There. They make it's not just a montage, not a series of montages of them interacting and falling in love. they have pauses in between the song where they would be talking about something. Like they'd be walking across a bridge and she's reading to him, and he kind of tells her, "Wow, you opened my eyes."
I didn't read, like, I didn't see that from that point of view or something.
Yeah. And in that way, it's like the problem with the Beast as a story thing was that he doesn't see beauty, right? And that's why he was turned into a beast, until someone could see the beauty in him. And that part when she was reading the book and he's like, "Oh, I never saw it from that point," and continue reading, she was actually describing the scene around them, right? The winter around them, the snow, the ice and all that stuff, and it was opening his eyes to the way the world is, like how beautiful things can be. And that was actually to show, oh yeah, he is changing, he is, and it's more than how in the original you don't have them talking. You just have them singing, and then
you just have snippets of scenes that allude to them being able to do that. But because in the film, it actually shows it to us.
Yes,
it's much more believable.
Yes,
it's not kind of like, oh, I just have to take for granted that this is happening.
Yeah,
I'm actually seeing the change in him, and that makes it, it makes it
more fully fleshed.
Yeah. So the great thing about the live action was they did flesh out the characters a lot better.
Belle has a mother, even though she's dead. They make mention of her.
Yeah, and she is kind of
in their life.
And it's important to her.
Yeah.
They gave one whole section which was not in the original, where they got whisked away to Paris, and you see Belle
discover how her mother died,
and like that was all part of them bonding.
Yeah.
I especially liked how at the end of that scene she goes, "Oh, let's just go home."
Yeah.
She actually says, "Let's go home." She kind of, at that point, you can already tell, okay, she's now accepting that
as home. And
home.
even the Beast, his reaction at that point was like, she called that home.
Yeah.
Right? And that was nice.
Yeah.
They bonded over the fact that they both lost parents when they were very young. Both lost mothers when they were very young.
So yeah, in that sense, I felt it did very well.
Yes.
And as I said, I didn't say this bit, but I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. Maybe I also had a bit of I wasn't expecting too much going into this.
Oh yeah.
Because I did listen to the Belle song before I watched it, and I had lots of issues with that recording. Oh god, the amount of auto-tune to Emma Watson's voice in that was appalling. Okay, and it was so obvious. Sorry.
Before we start talking about what we don't like, because there's a list. Let me say one more thing I did like was that in the end, when the last petal fell, you had about 5 minutes or so where you see every single servant slowly become that inanimate object, and it was so sad because
that was heartbreaking. It was
because Cogworth and Lumiere, they were friends. You knew that even in the animated one, they were friends, but it was like a comedy, kind of a comedic friendship that didn't really have much depth.
Yeah.
In here, I feel teary just thinking about it. Because Lumiere is the last one who becomes
inanimate,
and Cogsworth is the second last one, and they have this exchange where they kind of like say, it was great serving with you. It was great being friends with you.
I was like, I can't see you, but it was.
Yeah, I can't speak. And then, like, even that last thing that he said was kind of like squeezed out of Cogsworth, before he turned into a clock. I was ready to burst out in tears. Like, look, I know what's going to happen next, right? They're not going to stay that way. Yeah. But the fact is, they slowly became, like, the relationship between the servants were more important than in the original, right? They interacted with each other. They were not just friends. So you had the mother and son. Oh my god, when Chip fell and
I was like, someone catch him.
Oh my god, he shatters. I was like, oh my god, would he come back like
broken?
Yeah, and he was caught, and then he was put onto the cart before the clothes hanger, who never speaks.
Yeah.
He straightens up and then he doesn't move anymore, and you realize, oh, he's.
That's the last you can do. It's like, oh yeah, I love that part. That was such a great. it was a great again visually it was such a great way to show the decay and showing how important it was that that the pedal fell, and and it was very nicely done.
And now we move on to the not so good things, because this does link to the not so good things. Yes, Emma Watson was auto-tuned. The Belle song was some of the notes where she you hear certain notes in that song that probably shouldn't be there, or like was inserted later. A little bit.
It look, the thing is, I don't know whether they needed to have auto-tuned her to the point that it was,
but we don't know how she sounded before.
Look, I don't know how it is, but this sounded so overproduced and so overtuned to the point it's jarring.
And as the first song.
And that's why I had such an issue before watching this, that I was like, oh God, if this is what it's going to be like. Thankfully, I think Belle was the most auto-tuned song. Every other song subsequently was a lot better.
Yep.
It wasn't as noticeable. I think there were still certain bits which got auto-tuned. But there was nothing like that first song. Like look, to be fair, I think every other song I can listen to it quite normally, and I wouldn't go like, oh God, that's jarring. It's only really that Belle song that just ruins it, and unfortunately it is the first song, which makes it doubly worse.
Okay, so as usual, Peter hears the things, hears the problems. I see the problems. So when I'm watching this, first thing I see is the set, right? The cobblestones, how all the houses are really close together. This is a very small set, and I can't help but think this is a set. It's not an outside set. It's a soundstage set. Everything is really small. It kind of reminded me of a live action version of Cinderella with Brandy. I don't know whether you remember. It's a really old thing. You can see when I watched that, I was like, oh, is this one of those live action shows where it's very unrealistic, where all the sets are on purposely fairy tale like? Because I expected in a show like this, with the budget that they have, it's not unreasonable to expect that they would have this Belle scene in an actual countryside when she's actually walking on actual dirt roads, not this built-up soundstage setting. There's one part in the song when she's like, I want adventure in the big wide somewhere, and she's like on that plane, like, she runs out up on the hill and she's singing that. And I'm like, wow, that's a fake hill with a fake backdrop, because the lighting and the way that hill is really perfectly round. It's like, I can't help but see that, and then in my mind think of Sound of Music. And I'm like, wow, this is like completely different, because, not to mention, like, in my mind, realistically, I'm like, how long was she holding onto that note to be running up all the way to the hill to see her village off in the distance? And she's like, I want adventure in the great white somewhere. And I'm thinking, okay, you have a lot of open, like, if that's how far the village is from you, you have a lot of open space, and yet everyone in that village live as if in Paris. Like, everyone's crammed up together. When all the villagers open their window shutters, like, they're right on top of each other or next to each other. I'm like, how close are these people living to each other? That was my problem.
And in response to that, I think because in the original, when that song happens, everything does seem to be cramped, but because it was an animation, you can have those clumped together and not feel out of place, because you kind of just assume it's a cartoon. You can have people crowding into the screen and blocking everything, and it's not weird. But when you have real people doing it, it's kind of like, are you really going to stand that close with each other? And and
Yeah.
deliberately try and block someone. Like, it just doesn't make sense in real life. Like,
Well, framing wise, in the animated thing, they made it seem like everyone's was right next to each other, and they were able to draw a lot of people. In the live action, because of the amount of cast that they had what, like 30 people,
Yeah.
and they had to make 30 people seem like a lot more people.
Yeah.
So everything was much closer together. That town square in which they were all singing and dancing at the end, it's like if that was a real town square, you have a logistic issue because how would you normally walk around? You're always brushing shoulders with each other. This is not New York.
No.
And they made it look like New York in a way. And that was my issue with this song.
no, I still can't get the older tune out of my head. And also sad because subsequently when you hear her, she doesn't sound bad in all the other songs. It's just that one song for me anyway. Like everything else was fine. Just Belle's song just completely ruined it.
Let me just say in advance that I still like the original versions of all the original songs. Like, since then, I have tried listening to the album, and every single time I finish listening to the new song, I have to go back to the old album just to wash my ears. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, because obviously with a new production and a new take on it, they're going to change certain things. A note that normally goes down would suddenly go up in this version. A part where the beat follows along normally, in this one they'll rush certain bits or slow down certain beats to make it different.
Yeah.
And because as human nature is, when you're used to a certain version, when something changes,
it's a bit more obvious to us.
yeah, and it's not necessarily for the better. In a way, I feel like some of the changes to the song are changes for change's sake, right? Because for me, Disney songs, at least the old classics, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Lion King, all of that kind of stuff, their songs were, because I listened to it as a kid, they're perfect. Don't go and change it. Don't change it. And so with this new show, why I have problems is when they change the songs, when they make new songs. I mean, sure, this show was really fun to watch as an extension to the old show for me, right? They made fun of certain things. They fixed certain things. I liked it as that. I don't know whether I would like it as a standalone. Now, obviously, there's going to be plenty of people out there who watches this for the first time. And when they get older, like they probably watch it when they're 10 now. And then when they get older and they realize, oh, there's actually a previous one, and they go and watch the previous one, they might think, oh, wow, this is really dated or certain things. Hopefully, there are some children out there now who'll grow up and say, you know what? The original songs were much better. So I'm just saying that for people to know this is where I stand. Like, I'm going to complain about the new songs, but I'm sure there's some 10-year-old out there who completely disagree with me. And this is me, old woman grouching. Get off my lawn!
Okay, while I kind of am in that camp, I do agree that I do say, with the original songs, the original was just so good. It's so hard to improve on. In saying that, I felt that the original songs that I felt they did improve on in this one was Gaston. I actually liked the new Gaston song. But I kind of, I kind of liked it because I found it visually a lot more appealing.
Okay, yep.
In the current one, even though usually I'm more about the song sound of it. But I loved how they made use of the space in the tavern. I like how they did the whole dance sequence in the sense that they did that drum beating, stomping, and that kind of atmosphere. I felt it really worked for the Gaston song. So I love that. That scene.
Yeah.
Serena also really liked the fact that LeFou was paying all these people to say good things about Gaston. So I felt that song in particular. I would probably prefer the new one over the original. The Mob song, in some respects, I found it better. Although I had the issue with I can't hear the rest of the cast. Oh, actually, but that's an issue I have with the whole show though. I always found, sorry, I always found like whenever there was a
lead singing with
like
the
everyone
chorus,
else.
yeah.
The chorus have been like toned down to the point where they're like one person, but this is technically the whole town singing with you. I need to feel that presence of the town, and whenever there was that type of singing, I can only hear the lead.
Yeah,
which I have an issue with because
the lyrics in this song is not just with the lead.
Yeah.
Like the chorus actually has lyrics
stuff to say. That's important. Like
Yes.
I need to hear them. Like if you tone them down, I kind of assume that it's not important, but that's not the case. The song that I cannot stand in this new version is the title song, Beauty and the Beast. I absolutely detest Mrs. Potts in this show. I think she's horrible. I think she should not be near any musicals ever again. That's not fair on the actress, to be fair. But look.
It's just because
I love Angela Lansbury. She was the epitome of the perfect Mrs. Potts in my head.
Yeah.
And the voice was so well done.
Yes.
I can't hear anything but that version. And this new version was just
bland.
Oh God, I
didn't hate it. I just found it bland.
Oh God, no. It's because I loved it. Okay, and I do love the original so much, and this is completely personal opinion. But I could not stand.
In saying that, the other reason why I didn't notice the song was because, again, visually, I was too distracted by her dress. By Belle's famous, iconic yellow dress. The ball gown that was supposed to have all these layers and frills and dangling like ribbons. Look, at the start of this show, when she was first introduced into the castle, they tried to dress her up. Right? And the wardrobe throws all these ribbons on her, and then she ends up in this dress. And I couldn't help but at that moment say, okay, sure, it's a hideous dress. But the shape, in a way, like some of the frills, reminded me of the original dress. And I had that moment where I'm like, because I went into that knowing that this dress was, the yellow dress was less than impressive. When I saw that, I'm like, oh no. They just told us that a lot of frills on a dress is not good. That's what that scene was supposed to show us, right? That the current fashion is less frills, right? Right? So from that point, I'm like, oh no, that yellow dress is going to be really toned down, isn't it? But I didn't realize when I saw it, I'm like, did they run out of budget? Like, what happened? Like, it's like missing half the dress. That looked like the petticoat of the original dress. The original dress was supposed to have the shoulder bits were supposed to be off-shouldered. This is like just the normal. This looks like a dress that you just bought off a Macy's store. And when they were dancing, I could see that Emma Watson had to hold a bit of her dress and fling it out to make it more boofy than it was. And I'm like, this is a terrible dress. And there was that moment where the wardrobe, after Emma Watson was dressed, before you saw her, the wardrobe was like, the dress is missing something. Wonder what it is. Oh, I know. And like these gold branches that was in her room, for some reason, started to flake gold pieces. Look, I don't even know why. Like if it was a servant that became branches in that room, God forbid, that must be a very boring job. And then that you would shed gold pieces so that it would stick to her dress. And the gold bits weren't even that interesting either. If you told me it was like really intricate stitching, sure. But they looked like iron-on like patterns. And it didn't do anything for the dress. You had to zoom in to see it. Most of the time when she was dancing, you don't even notice it. And I'm like, okay.
I didn't have as much issue with the dress as Serena obviously did. So
it's an iconic dress, and they screwed it up. Yeah. This was like, you know how all Disney shows they have like that moment where the girl or the main character, even Aladdin, right, have that wardrobe chain, that makeover. This was her makeover dress, and they screwed it up. The only redeeming quality of this dress was how bright it was when she was riding away in the dark.
I didn't feel it was that bad, to be honest.
But you're a guy.
Yeah, well, anyway.
You didn't notice the dress because you were raging about the song.
Oh, yeah, true. I was raging on a different level, so... Notice that we're both fuming at different things on that scene.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, we start complaining and it just...
It just snowballs.
Look, I still love the show.
Yeah, it was a good movie.
Yeah.
I do say, like, watch it. If you were having doubts about watching, I would say watch it, because it is a good show. And they do a lot of good things with it. It just, unfortunately, there were just certain bits that just really bugged us.
Like Gaston.
Oh, God, Gaston. I really enjoyed how they portrayed Gaston initially.
Oh, yeah.
He was
Loved him.
He was so much more relatable and
A lovable character.
Yeah, and it was actually...
he was not too bad. Like,
No.
he wasn't so much of a douche. He was just... it was unfortunate in the sense that he fell in love with a woman who didn't love him.
Yeah.
And he was a little bit self-centered.
Yes.
But that wasn't a crime.
No. And the thing is, he wasn't being a dick at the start of the show.
No.
And this was especially true when Maurice came
Barging in.
He's like, "Oh, help me find my daughter. She's got
She's been taken
captured
by a beast, yeah.
And everyone in the tavern was like, "Oh, crazy Maurice.
We can ignore you.
We can ignore you." Yeah. And Gaston kind of comes in, and initially Gaston comes like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And that's when I was expecting him to kind of like do what the original did, just throw him out into the street and just close the door.
Yep.
That was what happened in the original. In this one, he actually goes with Maurice to help him find Belle.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in him, but he still went and did it.
He took his time. They went into a carriage. They drove out into the forest, and from what it seemed like, they were out in the forest for hours.
Yep.
And he was patient. Like, he listened to him. Like, he. And the most important thing is he didn't believe it.
No,
but he still did it.
Exactly. And yes, he did it with the hope that this is a way to
win Belle's hand,
which is fine though. Like that's kind of what you do, I guess, in that situation.
Like, can you really fault a guy for trying?
Yeah, exactly. And I really like that kind of portrayal at the start because
of Gaston, yeah.
And it's kind of like, yes, it's just he's just trying his best to win a female that just doesn't love him.
Yeah,
but that's how he was trying, and it shows him not being
a dick. But the thing is, when I was watching that, I couldn't help but think, are they going to really change the ending?
Yeah,
because how if he stays the way he is, it doesn't make sense for him to turn into to die.
Yes.
Right? Why would you kill off this character?
Yeah.
He's a perfectly...
Yeah, well, he's just a character that not everyone will like, but he doesn't deserve to die.
Yeah.
And this is the other issue we had, because from that scene onwards...
From that point
onwards, he suddenly does a 180 flip and suddenly becomes a douche.
Yeah, not just a douche.
Yeah.
He becomes a murderer.
Yeah.
Right? In the original one, he only does anything murderous when he meets the beast.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And from his point of view, this person wasn't a human.
Yeah.
It was a beast. For him, it's like hunting anything else. Also, he was driven completely by jealousy because he saw how Belle cared for this hideous beast.
Yeah.
When he himself, who's supposed to be the epitome of human specimen, has been turned down.
Yeah.
It was jealousy, it was frustration, all of that made him do what he did. In the new show, you had him taking his time out to go and help Maurice find Belle. They go out into the middle of the forest, and finally, Gaston says, look, you can't find the castle. The castle doesn't exist. We need to go back.
Yeah.
Right? And Maurice is, losing his mind at that point. So, no. It's here. We need to do this. And Gaston pretty much says, I am only doing this because I want to marry Belle. And and Maurice says,
there's no way I will ever agree to it, or something like to that.
Or something like that. Or like, Belle will never marry you.
Yeah.
At that point, Gaston loses his shit and punches Maurice out. Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine, okay? Because he supposedly have trouble keeping his temper. That's fine. But for me, the normal course of action at this point would be punch his lights out, tie him up, stick him in the back of the cart, take him back to the village, and
throw him into the asylum.
Throw him in the asylum, or throw him into his own house and just leave him there.
Yeah.
Whatever. Instead, in this show, they have him tie Maurice up to a tree with wolves howling in the background. And essentially, Gaston is saying, we'll leave him for the wolves, because if he dies, Belle will then marry me. She'll have no one to turn to except for me. And you're like, well, not to mention, if you're going to kill someone, leaving them in the forest in the hopes that some wolves will get them seems kind of... you know.
It just didn't make sense either way.
No.
But I could see why they deliberately had to do that. Okay, they changed LeFou's character quite a bit in this show. They had to make him, in a sense, they had to make him good at the end, right?
They made him important.
They made him important, which in the original LeFou was a sidekick, and he remained a sidekick, and that is his job.
He was supposed to be an idiotic sidekick.
Either way, though, they've made his character
so
important that they had to change Gaston's story to fit him.
Yeah.
And that's what I had an issue with. It was like, Gaston's character, either keep him like the original and always be an idiot, or keep him how he was in here, but give him more reason to do what he did.
Yeah.
This was such a out of character
flip
that didn't make sense unless they deliberately wrote it to make LeFou's character kind of turn against him.
Yes.
And that just made LeFou's character suddenly more important than he was in the whole show to begin with, which I was like, ugh, no.
The CG in this was problematic to me. Be Our Guest was the worst thing I've ever seen. The plates were going everywhere. The song was elongated. Like, you know how I said before, with Something There, the song was made longer so that there were scenes in between the bits of the song. Yeah. This Be Our Guest has been extended to incorporate more CG.
Yeah.
And I felt there was too much CG. I really... Like, the original thing was supposed to be a song, a performance. And in this, it became a series of little skits of like, oh, this is this series of plates. Oh, this is Lumiere getting slid off the table. Oh, and one more thing. I don't like it when you have scenes of food and people not being able to get it. No, it just doesn't make sense to me. In the original one, they showed her the food she was eating, and it was a dinner for her. In this one, she's constantly reaching for food, and the food's constantly being taken out of her reach. I'm like, what kind of show is this? Like, they were failing in their most basic of duties. Like, they fail as servants because she's going hungry. By the end of the show, I don't think she ate a single bite. And also, her acting in that was a bit weird because I think they didn't tell her what visuals were happening, because I couldn't help but notice that she's sitting there with this kind of slightly out-focused expression on her face because she didn't know how far she needed to look, and she was just smiling this generic smile because she wasn't reacting to the fireworks or to the plate spinning around. And I found that problematic because they just went too far. Like they were like, oh, it's a chance for us to do all our CG stuff, so let's throw everything in. And I just didn't like it.
I didn't necessarily have an issue with the amount of CG, but what I did found problematic was the break in the music. To again, Serena's usually focused on the visual. I'm listening to the music because Be Our Guest was this one song. As you said, it's a one performance. I felt there should be this flow and continuity of the song. Because they had to deliberately elongate certain notes and certain scenes, the song felt as if it was break into segments. Like it wasn't flowing. Mm-hmm. It doesn't culminate into that final performance and that final loud song ending.
Yeah.
Blah. I guess then it's kind of It just didn't happen because they had to break things in between. So it's kind of like. I was just like, can we get there? And when it does finally, I'm like, now I felt like
I'm bored.
Like it's all, it doesn't.
This song needed to have ended by now, and you're still going.
Exactly. So I had an issue with that in that sense, that I felt like the song kind of got the song should have been done better, because it now doesn't feel like a proper song, because it had these breaks, it had these unnecessary breaks in between.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be like, Enchantress. I did not get her point in this film at all. She was so superfluous. She didn't need to be there. Like, and her, again, I felt like her part was kind of added in because they wanted to be slightly different, and I didn't like it though.
Here's the thing I heard. Okay, so the Enchantress comes in at the end. The last petal has fallen.
Yep.
The beast has died. Everyone had changed back to inanimate objects.
Yep.
Now, in the original one, not that they turn into inanimate objects, but in the original one, sure, the last petal has fell. Belle is crying over the beast, and she exclaims, "But I love you." And supposedly it's because she says, "I love you." Does she kiss him? No.
I can't remember.
I think she just said, "I love you," and then she falls on him and cries.
The spell breaks.
The spell breaks, and he turns into
back
to the prince. And I think all the rest of them change, or do they only change after she kisses him? Because there was a kiss. I know that there was a kiss, and then it kind of changes into a wedding scene or something. I can't remember. But the idea was, with all Disney shows, the kiss of true love or admitting true love is supposed to be this really powerful thing that breaks all spells. And apparently some people find that problematic. Like, if you show this to every single little boy and girl, they have an expectation of, love or whatever when they grow up. This is what I heard, right? Okay. For me, and they're saying that's why they made the Enchantress in the new show.
To come back in and save it.
Yeah, so that instead of it being Belle saying, "I love you," and therefore breaking the spell, it's the fact that she said, "I love you," and then the Enchantress knows that this is happening and therefore chooses to break the spell and revert everything back the way that it was. So it wasn't true love's kiss that breaks the spell. It was true love's kiss which shows the Enchantress, yes, he's learnt his lesson. Yes, he's gained someone's love. Therefore, I will break the spell. For me, I can't give a right? Like, I mean, I love the whole idea of
true love's kiss.
True love's kiss. Yeah,
like,
it's a fairy tale.
Exactly. Like, what do you... Oh, God. It's like, people just saying, "Oh, you can't read Harry Potter because it's practicing witchcraft." God. That exactly what it feels like, but we need to be careful not to give, little girls this fake idea that...
little boys.
Or little boys, that true love's kiss is going to solve everything. It's like, it's a freaking fairy tale series.
No, if that's the case, then you can't show any rom-com.
Exactly.
Right? That, you should give up, that love triumphs over all. It's like, yeah, but the whole point of these shows is like an escape mechanism.
Yeah.
We kind of realize that in real life.
Yeah, because real life
love
we know
doesn't probably triumph overall, and therefore we would love to watch someone else triumph. That their love is triumphant. So I'm like, yeah, you really diluted that. I love you. Yeah. Right? They really did manage to dilute it.
Yeah, because that was, that whole point of her admitting that. Yes, she actually does love the beast, which does break the spell, which does kind of... That's how...
Although I couldn't help but think, if they were supposed to dilute the kiss, they didn't do so. Because the Enchantress resurrects the beast and turns him back into the prince. And then they see each other, she recognizes him, and then they kiss, and that's then when the castle reverts. I was thinking when the castle was rebuilding itself, I was thinking, wow, that's one hell of a kiss. If they were supposed to dilute the effects of that kiss, they didn't do a very good job, because I couldn't help but think, wow, the whole castle is rebuilding just because they kissed. That's pretty impressive.
Overall, I did enjoy the show. I did enjoy the film.
I also enjoyed the fact that she knew about the curse in this one. Because in the original one, this spell is the most curious person I've ever met. You go into a castle, you're surrounded by talking inanimate objects. There's a beast who obviously used to be a prince because you saw the painting, right? And yet you don't ask a single question about why they turned the way they were. Like, she's even surprised. Like, in the original one, wasn't she surprised that he turns into a prince?
Yeah,
like, wait,
yeah.
you're in a castle. There's a painting. What? Huh? Whereas in this one, she knows, right? They tell her everyone's under a curse.
Yeah.
And she's like, what can I do?
But
And they're like,
you
no, this is not for you, right? That makes sense. I think anyone would ask that question. How did you turn into what you are now, right? So I actually like the fact that they try to play it off like, they're like, oh, there's nothing you can do. We're just hoping you can break the curse, but there's nothing you can do. You need to fall in love with the prince, but nothing you can do. Although at the same time, because of the fact that she was reading things like Romeo and Juliet as opposed to fairy tales, it makes sense for me for her not to think about how the spell could be broken.
Yeah.
If you think about the Belle song, she was actually supposed to be singing about how she didn't know he was a prince until chapter 3, how they're like the fairy tale kind of thing. Technically, if you read enough fairy tales,
you kind of would think about that, right?
Yeah. You go there like, oh, there's a spell to be broken. Let me just throw myself at the beast and kiss him and see whether anything happens. You know.
Actually, I also have an issue with that song in that particular section of the song where she does go, isn't it like, oh no, what was the lyrics? Where in the original, she's sitting at the fountain and talking to goats.
Yes.
She's showing the goats. Oh, and this is where she has something like, in this song, in the live action, she's not singing to anything. She's just singing to no one. She's singing in her mind.
Yeah.
She's not telling anyone. It doesn't make sense that she's telling nothing about
There are
that.
certain things in this show where the music, the things that they're singing, they're actually supposed to be doing certain actions.
Yeah. That wasn't there.
That wasn't there, no.
Like, and like, I was like, at least sing to the horse, for example. You have a horse, right? Like, it's okay, don't have a goat, but sing to the horse.
Don't have a goat, don't have a cow. Sorry.
But sing it to something. Like show that you're... Because that's how the original was done. Like, she was deliberately showing, because she had no one else to talk to, right?
Sure.
That was also a way of her to see how...
She was lonely, right?
She was lonely. She was only surrounded by these goats that was, and that part of the lyrics really jarred me, because I was like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to your imaginary friend? Because then that's kind of really sad as well. Like,
I didn't notice that bit because I think that was the part where I noticed her dress. Like, pull down your dress. It's hitched up. Why is no one else yelling, what are you doing? You're showing your legs all over the place. Pull your dress down. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think that about wraps up our conversation with Beauty and the Beast.
I think that wraps up our entire episode. Two episodes.
Yes. It has been a long recording session. Hopefully nothing goes wrong with the recording this time.
Oh God, yes. Please.
Because I'm not doing this for a third time.
Well, we know for a fact that the first hour was perfectly fine because we paused and re-listened to it. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So for those who you guys probably wouldn't realize, but this is our our third time talking about LARPing and our second time talking about Kinky Boots. So if it sounds we're less than enthusiastic on some parts, it's,
because we've said this
already and we're trying to re-energize ourselves to say this for a third time.
So before we go too much overtime, we already are way over time. We should end this. For our next episode, what are we talking about?
So we haven't actually decided what we're going to do, but we have two candidates.
Yep.
So the first candidate is a TV series called Dirk Gently, Holistic Detective Agency.
The TV series, not the book.
Not the book. So that's one option. And the other one is?
The other one is a book titled S, full stop. And it's a project done by J.J. Abrams. The author was actually Doug Durst, I think it was. Yeah. Just Google I'll have the links. So the reason being is the book is something we wanted to do, except Peter will now need to go and buy the book.
Yeah. Now, this is a book that I will actually have no issue with because I like reading physical books. But Serena has, as you would have realized, Serena doesn't like reading physical books.
No,
but this one.
I actually recommended this one.
Yeah, this one you actually have no choice but to read the physical because
this is not just a normal novel. There's a lot of like bits and pieces included in it. There's a lot of multimedia. Like when you're reading, the premise of this book is this is a old book found in a library. And apparently there's this one student who's reading it for a project he's doing. So he's written in the margin all his notes. So when you're reading this book, there's his notes in the margins, and he left the book in the library. And this girl finds the book, and she reads the book and his notes, and she writes her comments in it, and she leaves the book exactly where she found it because the guy comes back to find for his lost book, finds her comments, and he comments on that. It's not a love story. I don't think it's a love story, but it's supposed to be a mystery in a way because the original author of the original text was supposedly killed in mysterious circumstances, and the original student was writing a thesis on what certain things probably. Or whatever, right? And there's a mystery around it and she helps him, whatever, right? And like in their notes, she would say, oh, this passage reminds me of, say, this news article, say. And in between the pages, there will be a newspaper article slipped between the pages. So when I heard of this book, I'm like, wow, it's not just a
book.
It's not just a story, right? I would be willing to read this book for all those little things that's included in it. I bought this book 2 years ago. Actually, more than 2 years ago. This book was released in 2013, and I think I bought it during that time. Anyway, the thing is, with this book, if you Google it, there's actually ways to read it. Some people say you should read the whole book in one go. All the comments in the book, you should read it all, and the text on that page at the same time. The thing is, those comments that are in the page are layered. You know that the grey writing, the ones in pencil, was written by the guy when he first read the book. Then you know that the blue text is written by the girl when she reads it the second time. And then you know the purple one is written by the boy in response to the girl's first comments, so on and so forth. So some people decide to read the book, original text first, then read it again with the pencil, then read it again with the blue, then read it again, so on and so forth. So that it makes more sense, because when you're reading page 1 and you're reading all the comments there, they skip in time. Because some of this stuff might be referring to stuff that doesn't happen until way later in the book. So when you're reading it, how should you read it? And I decided when I was going to read this book that I'll read the original text first and then I'll go for it chronologically. Unfortunately, the original text is very dry and kind of boring. And I think I've read 1/8 of the book and I've kind of stopped. So now that I've told Peter about it and Peter's kind of interested in it, we're going to try to read it again. So he has to try and
you'll try to read it again. I will read it for the first time.
Yeah, I will try to read it. This time I'll read all the comments because that might make it more interesting and get through it. Peter will need to try and find the book.
Yes.
And if we can't do it, then we'll do Dirk Gently. Because Dirk Gently is a TV series where it's one of those shows where if you watch it the first time, there are certain things that you miss. Because they not jump in time, but there are certain things that show up in first episode that they refer to later on. And so when I watched it a second time, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize all these things were hidden in there. And in that sense, it's very much similar to this book. There's things that are hidden and layered, and I think it's really well done.
So those are our two options. I guess you'll know which option we decide to proceed with during next episode.
Yes.
So I think that's do you want to do our closing
yes
remarks?
You can find us on Twitter at triggerpointfm. You can email us on triggerpointfm@gmail.com. You can find the show notes at www.triggerpointfm.com/07. Or if you want to watch this, although I don't know why, you've already heard it and there's nothing different. You guys find us on our YouTube channel. You just have to find Trigger Point Podcast. So until next time, I think we should say goodbye. Although I just realized something. If we split this into 2 episodes, which is what we're going to do, we're missing the goodbye for one of them. Okay.
I guess you would just have to do one at home, and it's like, this will be the end of the first episode.
I'll see how
You'll see how it goes. In saying that, everyone, good night.
Yeah, we'll see you in 2 months' time.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.